Hi everyone, Sean Paul Ellis here from the Saturday Morning Cartoons Podcast. Remember, that's morning with you. Some pre-show announcements. Who doesn't love pre-show announcements? Well, I mean, sometimes they're just okay, but I've been doing a great job at these, so I'm going to keep them going. Today's quick pre-show announcements are a shout out, a reminder, Patreon, and also what's happening on today's episode. So our shout out comes from YouTube on episode 253. Yes, that's last week's with Fantastic Four. We have Ace Hardy. He messaged us with a double high five emoji and then an explosion emoji. Ace, we love it. Thank you so much, man. With double high five emoji back to you, explosion emoji, and then a second double high five emoji back to you. We really appreciate you being so positive, and we hope that you enjoyed the episode. We really appreciate the message. A very quick reminder. You have all been fantastic. Every single one of you that has listened has been fantastic about suggesting cartoons that we should be watching. We go through all of them. Trust us, we are going to get to them at some point in time. You could take a look at the list of all the cartoons that we've watched. That's all 254 episodes that we have in a document, and that's over 250 plus cartoons that we've taken a look at. If we haven't watched your favorite, recommend it to us. The link to that list and how to recommend cartoons in the bio for all of our social media sites. That's right, our Facebook, our Twitter, our Instagram. You can go there. It's the weird link that says Linktree. Just click it, check it out. There's buttons. It's super easy. A quick ask. We have a Patreon. You can support this show and our original content. We want this to remain as ad-free so it can just be a majority of us and our friends just kind of giving you our opinions about shows that we're watching. Plain and simple, that's what we're looking to do. Don't want to support us? Cool, this message isn't for you. You probably skipped over this portion of the intro anyway. No worries, enjoy the show. If you really want to support us, awesome. A couple people have reached out and done so, and it is beyond kind of you. We really appreciate it from the bottom of our hearts. Again, click the link in the bio of any of our social media, or you can just simply go on Patreon and search Saturday Morning Cartoons. So what is on today's episode? So Disney Plus is about to become a thing in November, whether we want it or not. There's so much hype around it, and with Disney's acquisition of Marvel, we get a bunch of old Marvel cartoons as a part of the streaming service. Today is our final Disney Plus cartoon, fingers crossed, right? And we're discussing The Incredible Hulk. We asked Twitter if they had ever watched The Incredible Hulk, and these are the responses that we got. We have Creed Stonegate. He says, the 90s Hulk was a great show, and I like how it tied into the Marvel universe more than the 80s show, but the 80s cartoon was so iconic and had superior voice design and voice work. This one is really cool, but it just can't compete with the 80s one, at least to me. Well, Creed, I'm not going to disagree with you. Actually, check out this episode. I think you might actually be correct. So no worries there, but thank you, Creed. We have our buddy EJ on Twitter reaches out and he says, no memory to speak of other than maybe the Spider-Man crossover. That wasn't a question mark. I read it as a question mark. It didn't seem like EJ was 100% sure on this one. So I filled that in for you, buddy. So no worries. We have on Twitter, Phoenix in Crisis. He says, I remember the Hulk's arch enemy, the leader, was voiced by Matt Frewer, who played Max Headroom, whom I love. And the leader's henchman, Gargoyle, was voiced by Mark Hamill. They do both excellent, sinister, raspy villain voices. 100% agree with you, Phoenix in Crisis. They definitely do that, and we're going to talk about it today. And then finally, our friend Alex, that's at Dude Exclamation, who has been on the show before, messaged and he says, I actually dug this one. UPM had a pretty decent cartoon block, if I remember correctly. They did. They had the Marvel Action Hour, which had a lot of shows. This is the fourth and final of that Marvel Action Hour. We have done the other three, and you can go check them out. So without any further ado, was this Hulk actually so incredible? Question mark. All of this and more. So now, on with the show. Hello and welcome to Saturday Morning Cartoons, the Collider weekly podcast for all things animation, including news, reviews, and interviews, coming to you from inside the lab where I've been exposed to gamma rays during the detonation of an experimental bomb. I'll be your co-host, Sean Paul Ellis. And joining me from inside of a nutrient bath where he's just trying to relax with some scented oils. He's just trying to calm down, gang. Just trying to calm down. Welcome my co-host, Dave Trumbore. David, how you doing, buddy?
I am doing excellent in here. It's like a sensory deprivation tank. You can just kind of float and relax and absorb some gamma radiation, and it's nice. You should check it out. There's room in here if you want to come on in.
I'm gonna get my own deprivation tank. I don't want to be weird about it.
That's okay, listeners. There is plenty of room in here for you guys to come on into my nutrient bath.
God, this has already gotten just as horny as tonight's show plus Iron Man and Fantastic Four all rolled into one.
And stuffed in a nutrient bath.
Oh, did it need to be put into a nutrient bath?
If you drink every time we or the people in this cartoon say nutrient bath, you're not going to make it to the end of the episode. Fair warning.
Also, don't do that. We do not endorse the idea of turning disclaimer. Do not turn this show into a drinking game.
Unless you're
tell us about it.
Nutrient bathwater, which I'm selling my used nutrient bathwater to our listeners out there.
Oh, man.
That's a Twitch joke. They'll get it.
Yeah. It's just your gamer bathwater that you have that you're selling out?
Except it's nutrient bathwater, so it's even better.
Yeah. God, what nutrients would you have in your nutrient bathwater?
Science nutrients.
Oh, well, that's probably the best kind that you want.
85% or better. I don't skimp.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, hold on. What are you fleshing out the rest of the 15 with that you're skimping on?
Just gamma.
Just gamma.
just get straight gamma. Turn it up.
Oh, man. Speaking of gamma, if you didn't read or know anything about what we're talking about tonight, don't worry about it because we're about to fill you in. We are talking about The Incredible Hulk from 1996. You might be asking, why did you decide to watch this? Because Sean, Dave has obviously been torturing you for the last couple weeks.
That's what I do best.
Iron Man and Fantastic Four from 1994. You might want to, round out that Marvel Action Hour with completing the 4 shows. And if you're asking yourself, wait, there were 4 shows that were in this? Yeah, little tip. Biker Mice from Mars was the 4th. And we've actually already covered that, I think, back on episode 178.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's the one. Yep.
Yeah. So, man, we just have all these cartoons, all weirdly full of bizarre stuff, horniness.
Nutrients.
And tons and tons of nutrients. By the end of this, I feel like we're just going to be selling some type of multivitamin to people that is just like irradiated daily vitamins that you would get.
Sure.
Centrum Gamma.
Perfect. Done.
Yeah.
Sell it.
Easy. Man, we made this.
Put it in a box.
Yep. Told you that we weren't going to be sponsored by ads, but now evidently we are.
Just radioactive daily vitamins.
Buy them. Oh, man.
But don't take them.
Yeah, don't take them.
Just buy them.
Please. If you are not familiar with 1996's The Incredible Hulk, don't worry about it, because we're actually going to toss this over to a longtime listener and friend of the show, Bobby Anthem, to give us a little bit of synopsis of what we can expect from The Incredible Hulk. Bobby, take it away.
Based on Marvel's famous comic hero, this animated series presents the adventures of Dr. Robert Bruce Banner. An accident during the test of Banner's own creation, the Gamma Bomb, transformed him into a powerful hulking being. Since then, he's been on the run because the Army sees him as a threat which must be destroyed.
Thank you, Bobby. As always, my goal is to see if we can just get Bobby Anthem in one of these Marvel cartoons.
I feel like Bobby is too chill for the Hulk, though. Is there a Hulk persona where he's just like chill Hulk?
Like the Chulk?
Like Chulk. That's a
Chulk.
Terrible name, but like you could be the
perfect.
Chulk if you want, where he's just big and strong for no reason, but he's super chill, just like really laid back and not mad about it.
I mean, if you took Bobby and Hulk, bulk sounds like you're buying something in surplus.
Yeah.
Or it sounds derogatory.
Maybe. I mean, there is the bulking up aspect of things, which is kind of positive, and that's nice, I guess. But to call somebody the Bulk, wasn't the Bulk actually like a knockoff of the Hulk from like a Tick cartoon or something like that?
It sounds like.
Or Venture Brothers. I think there was like a Bulk somewhere around there.
100% sounds like it's within either of those shows' parameters to be able to make that happen.
Bobby, you can do better than both of those ideas.
I agree with that. Man, so we are talking about The Incredible Hulk. Why are we doing this? Guess what, gang? Disney Plus is coming.
Not paying us. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, and not paying us. Whether you like it or not, Disney Plus is coming, and they're also not paying us.
We're paying them. What a bunch of rubes we are.
Jesus. We're not doing good at... If somebody was to look up good at business, it is not either of us. So, yeah, we're not there. Don't worry about it. We're fine. But... what is fine is that we did end up watching from the 90s, The Incredible Hulk, 1996. This is season 1, episode 13. It's called Darkness and Light Part 3. This was the highest rated episode on IMDb. And we're going to get into this. And as always, whether you're a longstanding listener or you're a new listener, don't worry, because we're going to talk about the good, the bad, and not the ugly, like the spaghetti western. We're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the LOL, because we want to, give some merit to some things that were good about this. We also want to acknowledge the things that either didn't age well or didn't work in this show. And then finally, we want to talk about some of the things that kind of made us laugh. What was a reason that we would continue watching this, or just what was something that was surprising and goofy that kind of just surprised us when we were watching this cartoon? So to get into this tonight, let's start with the good. Man, there's a lot of interesting stuff for all three of these buckets. But Dave, what worked for you? What was good?
Yeah, I think we're in agreement on a few of these here. The main one being the lore from Hulk comics and the characters who you actually get to meet. Sure. For me personally, like the Hulk comics weren't ones that I followed a lot. So it was basically limited to the live action TV show, which did not really follow the comics at all.
The Lou Ferrigno one.
Lou Ferrigno one, and Bill Bixby, I think, was the guy who played David Banner instead of Bruce Banner. A whole nother thing we'll talk about at a different time. But the characters from the comics, I didn't really know that much until, honestly, later 90s comics or 2000s comics came out, or I actually saw the two, live action movies where they started to factor in some of those characters. But this cartoon actually has a lot of them. So if you're looking for more Hulk characters that go beyond, Betty Ross, Thunderbolt Ross, Talbot, you've got things like the Leader, you've got Grey Gargoyle, you've got a bunch of like crazy mutant bugs that I don't know if are in the comics or not, but they show up here and they're fun anyway.
I'm trying to figure that one out.
Yeah, when they showed up, I was like, I don't know that this was a thing from the comics or something they made up for the cartoon. But honestly, the range, the cast of characters here was pretty cool to see. Way more than just the Hulk and Banner.
Right. It's, you talk about these bugs, and we have this kid. Well, no, I mean, we, like you mentioned, just even in tonight's episode, we had so much that was there. We had different agents within S.H.I.E.L.D. to Doc Samson, to talking a little bit, even in the episode intro about Leader's forces and Leader himself. We have a Hulkbuster armor. We get like a quick glimpse of Gargoyle for like 2 seconds.
Yeah, that was all in the recap, yeah.
Right, we get Frank, who's this kid who talks to these bugs. And
Wait, where'd you get Frank from?
I thought his name was Frank.
I think it's Rick Jones.
Is it Rick Jones?
I don't know where you got Frank from.
Frank.
Did you watch like a weird translation? Frank.
I hope
Maybe
so.
His middle name's Frank. But no, that's
matter.
Rick Jones because he's actually part of the comic lore too. And I had to look all this stuff up.
Really?
So I'm not bringing like prior knowledge here. I had to look this up because I was like, wait, did this thing that actually happens in the season 1 finale actually happen to this character from the comics? So real quick lore background. Rick Jones was a kid who traditionally in the comics was like dared to go like race through the testing site for this gamma test. And he was the kid who Banner actually saved from the explosion. So he knocked this kid
have this job.
Exactly. So he knocks this kid into like a trench. Banner takes the gamma radiation, turns into the Hulk. But then Rick feels bad about it, so he sticks around. Plus, he also needed a job. So he sticks around and he works for the research facility to help. But then the thing that happened to him at the end of this episode happens to him in the comics.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I don't know about the mutant bug stuff. That's somewhere in there or not, but yeah.
I also just want to say, I know that we mentioned that we're not good at business, but if you are involved in a workplace accident and then you decide to stick around at that workplace...
If you cause the workplace accident.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And you decided to stick around, there's a lawsuit just waiting to happen for Rick every step of the way. Or, I guess Frank.
Rick and Frank, he changed his name.
Frank.
He went to witness protection.
Oh, gosh. Thank you for clarifying that this is Rick Jones. I trust me, you know how hard it is to Google Hulk's friend Frank and get 0 results back earlier? I was like, this seems like it's weird, like it's non-canon.
Do you know how hard it is for me to not say like Rick Ross or Betsy Ross instead of Betty and Rick Jones?
Because Rick Ross is the first thing that jumped into my mind.
All of these names. Betsy Ross. I was like, famous Marvel hero Betsy Ross. God.
Has Rick Ross been in a Marvel series at some point?
He will be now, I guess.
I mean, let's make it happen.
Let's make it happen.
Oh, perfect.
This is also, like you mentioned, Doc Samson here, which another insane character from the comics who was like basically dosed himself with the gamma radiation from the Hulk, like the Hulk's blood samples or something like that at some point, just so he could be on par with the Hulk. But he's also on par mentally and intellectually with Banner. So basically all that happened to him was he got super muscly and it turned his hair green. So you can always spot him in a Hulk cartoon because he's the only person with green hair, whether he's wearing a lab coat or not. Yeah.
It's like two quick things. That's an OSHA and probably a HIPAA violation, like at once. How would you
at the
do
same
this?
time?
Stop it.
And he's still a doctor.
You could have also just dyed your hair green, jerk. Like there was no
just hit
reason
the gym,
to.
bud. Like it's fine.
Yeah.
Just bulk up.
Gains.
Yeah.
Oh man, we are both in agreement that this theme song,
Yeah.
pretty decent.
It's okay.
Yeah, like I guess I'm saying pretty decent comparison-wise to Fantastic Four and Iron Man, which were both hot trash.
Yeah. Iron Man at least had like a cool kind of like metal lick to it, which was fun.
Right.
But it was more the visuals, which honestly, in this one too, I think the visuals are stronger. But what about you?
Yeah, I thought the visuals were pretty good in this too. I was pretty impressed with kind of everything that we saw. They did a pretty decent job of using like some negative space to kind of show sort of the shadows that you had back and forth between Banner to Hulk and then back. It was also interesting to kind of see sort of the scale in terms of what was happening, because originally you get, sort of this Hulk kind of Banner internal, I guess, like apologia that they have for this point.
Yeah.
Then you get sort of a leader kind of entering in, and then you get the general, and then you get, all of these different villains from, anywhere that's within the Hulk, kind of attacking him or kind of even coming like out of the ground and grabbing him. And so you just kind of feel the weight and maybe the gravity of the situation that Bruce Banner and the Hulk are kind of in. You sort of see the scale and the fact that like there's going to be a lot of cameos. And we've talked about this for the last 3 weeks. The cameos of all of these weird, characters that like you might be familiar with from the comics, but chances are, unless you're like a super fan, you may have never heard of some of these people before.
Right.
And so
like Frank.
To see, yeah, exactly. I'm never gonna live that down now. So you get all these different characters and you get all these different people in there, and I think that that's kind of fun to see that in the theme song as well. I want to correct and say, because we keep saying theme song, there's no real song. It's just sort of a score.
Well, they yell Hulk, and they yell like Incredible Hulk a couple of times. That's it.
Yeah.
They really didn't put a whole lot of thought into this one. I do, though. I really do like what you're talking about with the visuals, because the visuals do a great job of selling that inner turmoil of Banner's mind, where he's quite literally wrestling with the Hulk sometimes, but he also has these snippets of like romantic entanglements with Betty, and trying to like keep all these things separate and balance them out, which is the crux of like the conflict of that character. It's always been a Jekyll and Hyde kind of thing. And we get a lot more Hydes than we were expecting at the end of this episode, which was pretty cool, because that comes from the comics, for better or worse. We'll talk about Joe Fixit when we get to that point. But I was surprised to see that pop up in this cartoon. That was a pleasant surprise.
Yeah. So but I think it's challenging though, because unless Bruce Banner and Hulk or Ms. Ross that you see throughout, majority of this episode, who actually kind of intros us to everything that's there, which is a decent framing device that they utilize, as well as also it serves to kind of convey some additional information and kind of recap everything that's been going on. Evidently, Betty's doing a blog
I don't know what she's doing.
It doesn't matter. Don't worry about it. I wouldn't put any thought or time or energy into anything that any of these people are doing, Dave. I'm pretty sure you already know what my opinion is of this show.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. So there's just, there's a lot going on, but to even give maybe some clarity to this large mass of characters and all of this Hulk lore that they have, again, just a quick title screen just to kind of tell and say who some of these people are.
That
because
would be nice.
Again, they throw so many at you so very quickly, and it's very easy to confuse and say that maybe Rick Jones is Frank. Who knows? It could happen to anybody, is what I'm trying to say.
This whole thing was a defense of your
nobody should at me about how wrong I was about that, because I don't care.
I hope somehow you heard Frank and you were correct, and I heard Frank and was like, Rick Jones, got it. And all the Wikipedias are wrong and everything else is wrong. It's all Frank. And I also have apparently a reading disability now, because Frank looks like Rick Jones.
It's Wikipedia, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I am going on to
You're
edit
gonna change
right
it.
now.
Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
I'm gonna
While
change
Sean
everything
edits
right now.
that
Don't
out.
worry, you're fine.
Can I talk about another thing I like from the series?
Yeah, please.
I actually liked how this particular episode. Now, granted, this is a part 3 of a 3-part arc at the end of season 1, so they have a lot of stuff to wrap up. We didn't get a chance to watch the earlier episodes, for better or worse. They're fairly well rated too, the previous 2 from these, but this is the highest rated. In the beginning, for the first like 30 to 60 seconds, Betty Ross, as part of her vlog that she just posted and uploaded, gives you a recap of the previous 2 episodes. So you get caught up really quickly, and then they launch you directly into the action. So I usually don't love recaps and stuff like that if you've been watching the show all along, because you're like, yeah, I just watched it, I know, or I just saw it last Saturday, like, I get it, I know. You don't have to recap, you're just wasting time and wasting space. But for us, who didn't get to watch it, it was like, oh, okay, cool. There was a lot going on in this last 3 episodes. Like, Hulk was split from Banner in a nutrient bath. That's where that comes in for the first time. Hulk and Banner are split. So, like, the Hulk in his, like, rage form is in his own physical body. Banner is in his own physical body, but he's just, like, his human form. So, eventually, in this 3rd episode, they have to clash. One of them is going to win, or possibly they're going to reunite, and that's the conflict. So I really like that narrative setup, and then everything just goes all-out action from there. And by the end, we get some bizarre twists that you won't see coming, and then a little bit of the cool comic book lore, which we alluded to, too. So I thought it was actually a pretty solid episode from a narrative standpoint.
Yeah. And, I would hope so. I mean, we have watched 3 of the highest rated episodes, and it feels like this one is the one that was sort of the most competent.
To be fair, the other 2 were the series finales, right? So they were the end. They weren't setting anything else up to continue from there. So we ended on both of them with a really sloppy end note from Tony Stark, and then a really just kind of like disconnected, what are you talking about moment from Silver Surfer, of all people, in Fantastic Four. This one at least leaves you on a real cliffhanger. It ends with a clunky bit of dialogue, which Sean will get to in a little bit. But it is a good cliffhanger for the next season, because it's actually like a midpoint. They had more story to tell. So it actually worked better for that, I think.
Right. No, I agree.
Yeah.
And I mean, and maybe if we went back and we had the time and we, did the same thing and watched the exact same episode in terms of the sequence and the seasons that we had for Iron Man and Fantastic Four, maybe we would go back and we'd say, hey, maybe give him a shot. But guess what? We didn't, and we don't.
And we
don't recommend that you spend your time, and we're not going back to do that.
If I exhaust the Disney Plus catalog and get to the point that I'm watching the entirety of those 2 series, and something has gone drastically wrong.
Yeah. Help Dave, then. He is
Help me. I haven't slept for 8 weeks.
Yeah. Should we now maybe talk a little bit about what didn't work?
Oh, I got one more thing real quick.
Oh, you do?
The cast. I didn't think the voice acting was the best for most of this, but the cast was really, really good. I'm not going to go through everybody here, but if you go to their IMDb page, they have a lot of really good stuff. First of all, we get Lou Ferrigno, who plays the Hulk in this, and he played the Hulk, like the physical form and the kind of like grunting, minimal vocal stuff in the, 70s, 80s live action TV show.
70s, yeah.
70s, 80s, yeah. Yeah, so he played it there, and he shows up in the Spider-Man comics later on at some point too. So like a Marvel sweetheart. It's always cool to see him pop up. So it was nice that he got a chance to do this for the show. Playing Banner was Neal Mcdonough, which you're a fan of Legends of Tomorrow. You've probably seen him there recently, but he's been a great actor over the years in a ton of different roles. You've also got names you may recognize like John Vernon, Mark Hamill, Luke Perry, who plays Frank/Rick Jones, which I'll talk about him in the LOLs a little bit more.
When you say Rick Perry, or when you
Perry.
say Luke Perry, when you say Luke Perry, you mean 90210 Luke Perry?
Yeah, the late Luke Perry, sadly.
To kind of go, well, I mean, rest in peace, Luke Perry, obviously, but this is the second time we've had a 90210 cast with Brian Austin Green as Human Torch.
That's right. Except this Luke Perry is just kind of like a dude who just rides around on a motorcycle a little bit, causes some havoc. You've also got familiar names like Cree Summer, Jim Cummings, Maurice LaMarche, Kevin Michael Richardson, John Rhys Davies, Clancy Brown, and the one and only Stan Lee. No,
I mean, all good, voice actors, all good actors just in general. It's very challenging because obviously when you kind of look at the opposite side of it, what were they actually working with in terms of the script?
That's the bads.
Yeah, that's when we kind of bleed into some of the bad. I mean, some of the writing, and we've talked about this, especially with Fantastic Four last week about really kind of understanding sort of like the monologuing that goes on, or just sort of, even with Iron Man, the weird pace and cadence that they have when they're talking sometimes is a little bit off-putting. Now, granted, this one has the benefit of being released in 1996. So you would think that for the other shows from 94 to 96 that they would have maybe had some lessons learned, maybe a retrospective where they sat down and they're like, hey gang, what worked, what didn't work? Great, let's move forward with the Incredible Hulk.
Right.
I don't feel like they ever had any of those meetings. Like somebody was like, yeah, we could have that meeting or we could all go home on a 3-day weekend. And they're like, yeah, 3-day weekend. Why would we not do that? That'd be insane. So it's kind of a bummer to see some of that because some of the writing for this is just not great. And I'm going to get a little bit more into that in my LOL.
Yeah, I think they probably pulled a lot of it directly from the comics, which those are two different media. They don't work. That's like if you're pulling TV dialogue or narrative structure and slapping it in a movie. Like the bones of it may be there, but it's just not the same. You don't have commercial breaks baked in. You don't have this like ABC structure all the time that you can get from scene to scene. Yeah.
Right. And it's challenging because this felt to me more like a soap opera in some cases than it did a comic book. And you would think that from sort of because the Hulk came out, it was like the early 60s.
I believe so, yeah.
I think it was like maybe 62, 63. And so when the Incredible Hulk came out, you have now at this point several decades, from the 90s, from 96 when you begin to put this show together, or 94, 95 when this went into production, that you would be able to pull from all of that lore that was there. And they did a good job with some of it, but just changing the tone to make it seem like it's way more dramatic than it needs to be is just something that was a big miss for me. Voice actors, great. Material that they were reading from and that content, it kind of felt a little bit trashed up.
Yeah, and it's like the crux of their story here is you've got, again, it's Jekyll and Hyde, and then you've got this like military science research organization built up around it. You don't need to go soap opera with it. Like you're already stretching like the imagination there a little bit. Just have fun with it. With it. And they do for the most part. Like another one of my good points was the most of this episode focuses on Banner in the Hulkbuster armor taking on the Hulk himself. I actually liked the battle. Some of the details of it were really goofy and not quite LOLs. They're more of the bad side. But I like that we got to see it. But I think you had a difference of opinion on that.
I just think that and I don't know that it was necessarily a difference of opinion with that. It was just sort of how they decided that they wanted to beat the Hulk.
Yeah.
It wasn't the mechanism, but it was sort of the justification and the
right.
internal dialogue that you hear. Again, going back to like just not great writing and sort of the content for this just sort of being crappy. And again, I hate to belabor a point, but we've talked about this on Iron Man and Fantastic Four. And I know that if you're watching this and you're just like, I heard this in the last 2 episodes, I don't care.
It's a recap.
Saying it, Sean. It's a recap. Here's my vlog. But it just, you get these moments where instead of just preparing for what's next, they sit there and they talk about exactly what just happened to the character. And they're like, oh, how am I going to beat him? Oh, I guess I'll throw a punch. Here, he's going to hit me with a right and a left and a right. And it's just like, I'm watching the action take place. We've already established from the intro that you have the ability to be able to do a good job in terms of visual storytelling. So why muck this up with all this extra dialogue during these action scenes? Because this whole episode is just an action scene. Yeah. We've seen this in a majority of these shows. It's just one big action scene.
I think this one is just filler. Like they need to make sure that they're like getting across what's actually happening. So you get stuff like Betty, and now Betty, her voice actor, she's fine, but everything is delivered in like kind of like a whisper, like a real kind of like breathy, just like ASMR, just sort of like everything is delivered at like a low volume, just like a real like pillow talk kind of like breathy sound. I don't know why she does it, but it's every line of dialogue that she delivers. There's no change. If she's screaming, it's like a breathy scream. If she's just like, I don't know, reading a book, it's the same kind of voice.
The only thought and justification that I could have for that is that it feels like everybody else in this episode the entire time is screaming and yelling.
Yeah.
And I feel like just to have one character, any character, just be like, you know what, we're gonna change this up in terms of decibels. And of course, it's
Betty Ross while she's getting shouted over by men and Hulk alike.
Yeah.
But she has one line of dialogue where she's just like looking longingly like out the window, and she's like, "Oh no, Bruce, out there alone." in the belly of his own beast. And I'm like, oh boy, that's a rough line no matter who you are. But to give it in that like breathy whisper of a husk, like a husk of a voice, like it's just, oof. Banner's just as bad. Like his dialogue is just as bad. Here's the thing. Here's a line that I think came like directly from the comics because it feels like
sure.
He's squaring off against Hulk. He's trying to figure out how he's either going to defeat him, destroy him, or pacify him or something. So he's standing there in his little four-armed Hulkbuster armor.
That thing is atrocious.
We'll talk about that in the LOLs because that cracked me up. He says, Hulk, you came from me, are a part of me. Maybe you still are me. So how can I just destroy you? And it's a fine line when you're reading it, right? Because you can slow it down, you can pace it, you can put that gravitas on it. Like, it's supposed to be dramatic. But the delivery here was awful, especially because it was followed immediately by Banner, like, dragging Hulk, like, dangling him by a rope and just dragging him through the desert while Hulk is grabbing at all the rock towers that are going by. And he's like, this is like toy shopping with a 1,000-pound toddler. And it's like those one-liners are just
knock it off.
So bad.
Just get rid of it.
They felt like they had to constantly talk, right? There was no space for anything to breathe. There was no time for anything to kind of like sit emotionally. There was no weight to anything because they were in constant motion, constantly talking.
Right. They have this sense where they're trying to understand how to actually beat the Hulk, and he goes, I had to try to overload him with his crude brain.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, that's your brain.
Your brain,
you guys have just established that you're like, he is me. You are like over and over again. I'm just like, and the whole sensory overload thing, was this essentially they wanted to give him a brain freeze somehow?
I think, yeah.
I didn't buy a minute of it.
It's tough. I'll give him a little bit of a break on that one because at least in this medium, how exactly are you going to beat the Hulk? Like, if you shoot him with a bunch of stuff, if you try to trap him in anything, he's just going to get angrier and he's just going to break out of stuff because the angrier he gets, the stronger he gets. So this was kind of like, I think they were trying to, fritz out, short circuit his brain, just give him like too much at the same time. The execution was awful. They didn't do anything with it. But like, you could pacify him. You could talk him down. You could bring something or someone in. That would
give him like a
calm
Sudoku
him.
puzzle,
Sure.
like confuse the crap
Give
out of
him a
him. A whole bunch
puppy.
of word jumbles.
Put a kitten in front of him.
Yeah.
Bring Frank in. And that kind of works. The Beauty and the Beast thing kind of works when Betty eventually shows up. And there's an LOL I can't wait to talk about with Betty, multiple ones. But yeah, they got away from the like, music or beauty soothes the savage beast thing. And they were just like, just make his dumb brain seize up. Because he's dumb. He's an animal.
And the best part is that they're just, at some point, like towards the very end, when all of these things are happening, they're just like, he might have deeply buried memories. I'm like, you just said he has a crude brain. I don't want to say that he's incapable of storing deep buried memories, but this is a superhero that's fighting off of instinct and violence. Right. What?
Well, and this is right after, too, like, it's weird because it sets up Betty to, like, weirdly be like, the guilt burden, like, the scapegoat for this whole thing. Because she says, you have the line written here if you want to say it.
Oh, when she just goes, no hurt Hulk.
Yeah. And then Hulk, like, looks at her and he's like, Betty said, no hurt Hulk. And then it just, like, stomps away after they just blasted him in the face a bunch of times. They try to have it both ways, and the execution isn't really there. Because they try to say, like, you're part of me, but you're a crude animal. But we are completely separated because of the nutrient bath. But you've still got the memories that I have, so it's kind of like you're playing both sides, and it was just kind of sloppy storytelling. My major issue is with the pacing of this because it just hits the ground running, and like I said, they don't leave any time to kind of sit with those decisions.
Right. Hot take. I'm gonna say I would rather have watched the Ed Norton Incredible Hulk as opposed to watching this.
I still like that movie.
It's not terrible. I mean, he's no Mark Ruffalo, in sort of the MCU, but I mean...
Hey, man, if Mark Ruffalo can carry his own... Thor was close. If Mark Ruffalo can carry his own standalone solo Hulk movie, then we'll talk.
Yeah.
Because that's tough to do as Banner and Hulk.
Yeah. It's good.
Yeah. And we didn't talk about Eric Bana, so don't even worry about that one.
Yeah, no. I mean, I still like Eric Bana, so I just think that, the challenge is, again, like when we talked about Fantastic Four, it's like he's a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde character. Right. How do you keep screwing this
Just
up?
throw mutant dogs at him.
God. I don't get it. You you keep making these bad movies over and over again, and I'll keep watching them, but I'm not going to be happy about it.
Are you happy about the LOLs tonight?
I am pretty happy about the LOLs. Let's get into this, because we gotta get into this. We should preface this and mention about the fact that, like, this show, if you've been listening to any of the Fantastic Four and Iron Man, this show is all horny. This is all horned up in every way. This show took like a Cialis before they were doing it, because I mean, it's primed and ready to go.
They got a Pride Prism ready to go to the doctors.
Don't Google that on a work computer.
Don't do it.
Don't do it.
Unless you take an hour gamma radiated daily multivitamins.
Still shilling product. I love it.
Gotta do it.
Oh man. All right. There are a bunch of lines, but I've written a ton down. So here's one. We've been talking about the way that, like, Betty introduces everything, you know, and it just, so if I was to do this in her, like, ASMR voice, it's just like, video journal of Betty Ross continued. It's been so insane since. And she just continues to go on, and there's a nutrient bath at that point, and it's weird. It's very weird.
You can't just throw nutrient bath into, like, a recap and not have the people be like, especially if you haven't been paying attention, be like, wait, what?
What?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
try working it into, like, a normal everyday conversation today at work over lunch.
Or don't.
Or do.
Please don't. I will say probably my favorite line is from our general friend that he has. He has a
Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross.
Thaddeus Thunderbolt. He is at a gun at some point that he's been shooting Hulk that looked like the toy Simon.
You had to, like, in order to activate the gun, you had to, like, press the proper sequence and remember.
There's like a red, a blue, and a green thing that you just continually have to do. And so he barges in because Betty Ross and Bruce Banner have decided that they are going to have a wedding, because Bruce is, like, he's been separated from the Hulk. Yep. He's not doing very well.
He's on death's doorstep,
He's on death's doorstep. And Betty is like, I want to marry you. Banner is
Now's
like,
the time.
This is I'm gonna make you. Like, you're gonna be very upset very quickly with this decision. And Thaddeus Thunderbolt busts into the wedding when he finds out about it, and he says, "My daughter, to spend her wedding night, has a widow."
That's what you want to hear.
Yeah,
it's like the worst, like the opposite of it's kind of like a shotgun wedding, but in this case, it was a laser gun wedding aimed right at Banner's head.
Yeah,
but it wasn't to force him to marry her. It was to kill him and then his daughter widow.
He's got the tracer dot on his forehead, like just
Betty literally says, like, "Dad, you brought a laser gun to my wedding," which is one of the funniest things in these cartoons.
Is it worse than the S.H.I.E.L.D. agent that we have at the end just saying, "Sometimes a man's got to do what he knows is right"?
Agent Gabriel, man, I don't know if he has. I don't know if he has a background in the comics or not, but
I
the
hope he doesn't.
Least interesting character.
God,
can I rewind time on Thaddeus Ross here for a bit?
Please don't. But also do.
He has my favorite arc in this entire episode because he goes insane. Not even like, oh my God, he's doing such crazy stuff that it's totally insane. No, he loses his mind in the desert. So he's unhinged this entire time. First, in the desert, when Banner is fighting Hulk, Ross goes after him with the Simon laser. He just rolls up in a Jeep and starts blasting away with the Simon laser. But then when Banner ends up heading back and Hulk runs away because he got his feelings hurt from those deeply buried memories, Ross goes after him. He goes after him on his own. He drives into the desert somewhere, and then there's this weird time wipe where we don't know how long it's been. Banner's back in a hospital. Doc Samson is kind of looking at him like, he's probably dead. We don't know how long it's been. And then it cuts to Ross in the middle of the night firing his Simon blaster at just like random things that pop up that he thinks is the Hulk. But it cuts to his face, and there's like, I don't know, at least 2 days worth of like growth and stubble on his face under his mustache. It's like a slightly different shade of gray under his mustache, and he's completely insane. But they rescue him and bring him back too, which is when he busts in and brings a laser gun to the wedding. But that's not where it stops. They they mutiny against him there, and nobody has his side and whatever. But after they go through with the wedding, then they try to reunite Banner and the Hulk in a nutrient bath.
Ugh, stop.
I have to. So in order to do that,
I'm uncomfortable.
They put him back in the tank, and everything's fine. And Doc Samson's like, all right, we're good to go. Let's start this thing up. Now Ross is up on the balcony, up on the whatever, the second story, and he's like, yes, a lab accident. They'll never know it was me, and Betty will be free. And he takes a fire extinguisher and just smashes like one little like tape recorder, and somehow that starts a fire that rages through the equipment and explodes and injures or possibly kills at least 4 S.H.I.E.L.D. agents in the process, and then completely ruins the merging of Banner and the Hulk. Now what happens is poor Frank / Rick Jones tries to intervene again, tries to save Banner this time. Ross just throws him off the balcony. He takes him out of his wheelchair and just launches him off the balcony. Now
Rick jumps out of his wheelchair to try to get to the general.
Yeah.
General just takes him and tosses him. Yep. Just
there we go.
Yep.
Right over the railing, right into the nutrient bath.
Oh, God.
Now, here's the spoiler alert. This is the only spoiler alert I'll give for this 25-year-old cartoon show. When Rick lands in the nutrient bath, he turns into the Hulk. He absorbs the gamma radiation and becomes his own version of the Hulk. He's got cool hair. He's mulleted, whatever. He, for some reason, barks like a dog before running out into the desert once more.
Yeah, what was that?
I don't know.
It was in the episode that we watched at minute 19 minutes and 4 seconds. There is just this new Hulk, the Rick Jones Hulk, jumping out of the building, and there's just 2 dogs that bark for no reason. No dog is shown. No dog has been in this episode. There's no precedent that we have.
Maybe it's
for
the mutant
pups.
dogs from the other movie.
From the Ed Norton one?
No, from Ang Lee's movie.
No, it's definitely not. It was so silly, and for no reason, and it's very distinct. Like, you can very clearly, objectively say this is nothing else other than a dog barking.
Yeah, it's very much that. But what I loved about this is we get Rick Jones Hulk from all this insanity, but then we get Grey Hulk, which isn't really an LOL. It's just like, wow, that's pretty cool. I didn't think they were going to do Grey Hulk, who's also known as Joe Fixit in the comics because he's a kind of tamed down version of the Hulk who actually becomes like a Vegas kind of like fixer. It's a whole thing. They don't get into it in this cartoon. But yeah, you get a Grey Hulk, which I thought was pretty cool. I monopolized a lot of that time, so give me some of your LOLs.
Okay. I want to say I'll do the ending monologue, because obviously we're not spoiling anything. I'm not going to do this with the ASMR voice, but we have, again, as we've talked about, the ending monologues for these series of anything that's a part of the Marvel Action Hour have just been garbage. Don't worry, we're not about to disappoint. This is on the same level of a dumpster fire that you all know and come to expect from this actual show. And so we have a video journal of Betty Ross, addendum. Try as we may, perhaps it is beyond our control to alter the course of our destiny. The winds of change simply blow past us, humbling us, remind us how helpless we really are. But Doc Samson says to never give up, and I won't. Ever. Not until Bruce is saved from the beast within, from the Incredible Hulk. And that's it. And that's mid-season finale. Bong.
That's why
done.
there's dog barks in there, because that was a real woof of an ending. Perfectly
just
done.
Nonstop.
That was great.
Exactly. Yeah.
There were so many things, like, just tonally, just so many things that were off in this. But that one was pretty funny. I have to say, though, Rick Jones probably made me laugh the most unintentionally, because he acts as kind of like the comedy relief. At some point in a previous episode...
That's not comedic.
It's not comedic at all, but it was unintentionally funny. Like, at some point in the previous episodes, he was trying to distract the Hulk and, like, lead him away. And he somehow gets, like, his entire body apparently, like, crushed because he ends up in this cave with these mutated bugs. And they're trying to take care of him. And he's like, well, I may have some broken ribs. I may have some broken this or that. And apparently, like, all of his bones are broken, because the way he screams like an actual, like a little girl in this. And it was so funny to watch him just, like, collapse and scream like a tiny, tiny girl child. It's very, very funny. And then at the end of that scene, later on, he comes wrapped up head to toe like a mummy for no reason.
No reason at all.
All bandages fall off and he's totally fine. I just love everything having to do with Frank was hilarious.
I will say there's a moment where we've talked about our general buddy here, who obviously we've mentioned his facial hair and the extra 2 days worth of facial hair that he's grown. But he has, at one point, he's been subdued and he has a piece of tape over top of his mouth and over top of the mustache.
Yeah.
to the point where you can't tell because of how they colored it if it's just a mustache that's made of tape or a tape mustache or like what they've done with it.
Or just a
Something's
skin flap
blocking his
over
mouth.
his mouth.
Yeah. Oh God, like a weird Hellraiser type of thing. And so you don't know what it is. And so they rip this piece of tape off of the mustache of this general's face. He is unfazed, unflappable in terms of what has happened, and nothing has happened. Like it's like watching somebody play through the Uncharted video games, and you look at Nathan Drake's shirt, and you're like, he's been climbing up a cliffside for an hour. Why is his shirt never moved at all? And it's so. You notice it because it's a thing that like we just take for granted in terms of, life. And watching it in such a weird setting now, you just eye roll hard because you're like, this just looks so unnatural and goofy. Like they could have even used this because obviously Rick isn't pulling his weight in terms of the comedic impact he has on this episode. They could have pulled off part of his mustache. They could have had a quick quip about a mustache as a person with facial hair and a mustache. Like they could have said anything at any point in time. They chose to say nothing and acknowledge it and make it a skin flap over his mouth, and it's so gross. I don't want anything to do with it.
They could have just put a rag in his mouth before and then pulled it out, but no, they just tore a skin flap off his face and didn't say anything more about it.
You have like also just like set dressings that they have, or the tableaus that they create in these rooms are just so stupid silly. There's at one point where we talked about Bruce Banner like in his hospital bed and he's on like death's door. And they're trying to figure out what to do with him. And there's just a doctor that is in the room talking to another colleague. It's a big room, too. It's not just like, if you were to go to a hospital, like the small kind of like two-person room. Like this is like a mansion. Yeah. Like they've got an entire area just dedicated to like not letting Banner die with no equipment in it at all. Just a bunch of doctors. Just a bed and a bunch of doctors.
And the bed does have a metal clamp that goes across his chest with two giant nipple-shaped things for no reason.
Yeah. For no reason.
Very strange.
But for no reason, you just have these two doctors that are not in the scene, that are just background set dressing, and the one doctor is just, he has his brows kind of furrowed, his head's down, and he's just shaking his head no, like, ooh, this is a very dire situation. And they cut to him like 2 or 3 times for no reason. And he never comes into play. He's never one of the 4 people that like, when a fire hydrant's used to blow up a supercomputer gets hurt in any way. He's not in any kind of a nutrient. But he's just there. He's just chilling the entire time. And it's so funny to me to see these like moments of just like blatant stupidity in terms of what they were doing.
Can I ask you this? Maybe he was the doctor that initiated the inverse gamma mitosis?
That I knew that you were going to pull apart that technobabble because I laughed so hard. I was like, this is like watching anybody in the television show 24 talk about how they were going to look inside of a C++ in the header file to determine the GPS coordinates. And I'm just like, Get out of my face. You're an idiot. Right. That's not how that works.
Exactly.
Ugh, so frustrating.
I love it, though. I love when you just string various words together and you're like, that all works out. That's fine.
Yeah. Knock it off.
I am going to try to initiate inverse gamma mitosis later tonight, though.
Please don't. And also stream it?
In a nutrient bath.
I just hope it's Epsom salt in a bathtub somewhere.
It is now.
It is now. I have one final LOL. How are you feeling?
Home.
Okay. My final LOL is that if you look at the character design that we have for Betty Ross, she is the however you want to look at it. Yeah. I want to be respectful of this, but the character that we have watched on a previous show, which is called Bigfoot and the Muscle Machines, if you want to hear us talk about it for way too long, go back and listen to the 2-parter that we have for episode 120.
Why was that 2 parts?
Because that show was an hour long itself, and so we decided that we would dedicate 2 hours to talking about it. It's unnecessary. So there's a character in that called Yank Justice, and if you're just like, that sounds...
I had to look it up. We spent 2 hours covering that show that we watched, and I had to look it up to make sure that it was correct.
Yeah. It's not a Frank situation.
It's not a Frank Justice. Frank Justice is a pretty good name, actually.
Frank Justice is a great name, but Yank Justice for this character. Google Yank Justice and then Google...
Priapism.
No, don't. Stop it. Not on a work computer. We've already told you that, gang. But if you were to look up Betty Ross from The Incredible Hulk, they, in terms of character design and color palette and scheme, they are almost spot on identical in terms of hair, shirt, and pants. blew my mind because there was a part of me that when I saw it immediately recognized that it was a character that I had seen and that we had talked about in another cartoon, and my brain went wild for about 5 minutes trying to figure it out, and then I was like, this has to be Yank Justice from Bigfoot and the Muscle Machines. I don't know why.
And they have something else in common that I totally forgot about. They both drive trucks that get blown up and shot off the road. Betty rolls up to intervene between Banner and the Hulk, and also to stop her father from like trying to kill the Hulk or Banner or both of them. She rolls up and parks her car between the two of them as Ross is firing his Simon pistol. He just unloads into the side of her truck and blows it to hell, and she goes flying out, and he's like, "Buddy!" But he's basically just pissed that she got in the way. But it was a hilarious moment that he pulled a gun on his own family multiple times in this episode. I hope he's locked up at the beginning of season 2.
Yeah, that's the only way to proceed with this at any point in time.
Yeah.
Well, any additional LOLs that you have, Dave?
That's it from me, bud.
All right. Well, guess what? You listening right now. Yeah, you listen to this podcast. Turns out you have opinions. So do all of your other friends that are on the internet. They also have opinions as well. Guess what? They post them on the internet for us to read. And so we are going to head and take a look at some of them and kind of honor some of the special ones that we've found. And we are going to turn this over to a longtime listener in front of the show. Again, Bobby Anthem for this week's Love It or Hate It. Bobby, take it away.
Our Love It for the Incredible Hulk is titled One of the Best 90s Marvel Shows by We Are Live 11 in October 2017. It says, out of all the Marvel shows in the 1990s, this was the only one I watched from beginning to end. I found the show very good. It showed the complications between family, friends, and who to trust at the right time. I would definitely recommend this show to anyone who's a fan of The Incredible Hulk. I even think General Ross and Major Talbot were nice people. They were just trying to protect the world, same as Hulk, but from protecting it from him. I'm glad the show ended on good terms in the end. 9 out of 10. And our Hated is titled, The First Season Was Great, but Season 2 Reeked by Kai184 in May 2000. Kai wrote, the first season rocked. It had decent voice work, fun plots, great characters, and great moments. It even ended on a kick-ass cliffhanger with Rick Jones turned into a monster and Hulk going great like in the comics, though I don't think the Rick Jones thing happened. Sadly, Season 2 was really Hulk and She-Hulk. It was bad, so if you watch it, just stick to Season 1.
Man, if that was the Hate It, and you think that Season 2 is worse than what we watched tonight, I'm kind of glad that we watched Season 1 in order to talk about it, because if we would have watched something that was worse than tonight, I would have lost my mind. I would have Hulk raged and flipped out myself.
I would have just Gray Hulk kind of like casually just simmered on the sidelines and just been still kind of like chill and kind of okay with it. But it's interesting because Iron Man was the other way around, right? Like people hated the first season, and then when the second season came around, they actually thought it was better. So let me ask you this after we get through our reviews. Have this in mind.
Okay. All right.
I want you to rank these 3.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So
all
after
right.
we do our recommendations.
Yeah. I can get in with that. So for our recommendations, we can recommend a show and we can tell you why we recommend it. We can also say that we don't recommend a show, and we can give you our justification about why. And then finally, if we don't recommend something and we want to go one step further where we really hate that cartoon, we can give it the Who Framed Roger Rabbit style dip, which erases it from the annals of cartoon history. We won't talk about it on this show anymore. Don't worry, it doesn't exist as far as we're concerned. And so, Dave, what are your thoughts and feelings about 1996's The Incredible Hulk?
Not going to recommend it. But also not going to dip it. It's pretty, I know it's boring, but that's 3 for 3 for me with these cartoons. It's like, they're not good enough to recommend. They're just not as good as they could possibly be. And in the 20-some years since then, we've had better examples in different media. There's much better stuff out there to find. But it's not bad enough that I want to, like, erase it from existence. So, pretty cut and dry for me. How about you?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Again, I know it's boring, but, I mean, I kind of wish that I would have gone back and dipped Fantastic Four in retrospect.
Well,
I definitely...
You can always go back. I mean, you could vote for a dip. That doesn't mean it actually gets dipped. It needs to be a majority, I guess. So
right, I guess. So I guess.
Anyway. You can dip it in a nutrient bath.
Oh, please don't. And I don't want to think about that ever again. It's weird that I keep hearing nutrient bath, but I'm gonna have to shower to get rid of the stink of this nutrient bath.
Mm-hmm.
It's just it's very all encompassing and consuming.
That's
for me
the
at
science.
This point.
Your gammas have been inverted mitosically.
Yeah. Ugh. I don't even know how that science works. But.
So how would you rank these 3 that we had to watch and forced ourselves to watch over the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, on the bottom of the list is obviously going to be Fantastic Four.
Sure.
I really thought that one was just a giant stinker, which is a shame because you had so many different characters that you threw in. The cameos were ripe in that one. You went across the Marvel in terms of Avengers, X-Men, Fantastic Four, everything. You had so much that was there. It was a real stinker. I think then maybe my second, my silver medal would probably be the Incredible Hulk. And it's only because the reason that Iron Man wins out in the first place is that it was just the hornier cartoon. Like there was more hornball shit.
More hornier than Nutrient Bath?
Yeah, I
and
think
cabin
so.
getaways with lingerie.
Dude, we had people grinding in a swimming pool,
right.
and then we had like a dead PT.
Yeah, we
at
did.
Some point,
she burned up,
which is not funny in any way, shape, or form. And
he laughs into the microphone and records it.
God, it was funny. It's only funny because just in terms of the context and how they executed these scenes, like they could have done anything at any point in time, but they just chose to have these characters, as we talked about, who have kind of just like thrown things away at certain points. They just have Tony Stark just pick up a limp body and be like, she's all right. Like,
and you never see her again.
No,
she's not.
She's not.
This is interesting, though. I think we're almost like completely inverted here. I'm going to say there's a fine line between all these. I'm going to say the Hulk was the best out of these 3.
Okay. All right.
I
could see that.
The story was more cohesive for me. The voice direction and acting was a little bit, it was still bad, but it was a little bit better.
Okay.
And maybe because it was a season 1 finale, it had a better cliffhanger, so like better resolution, I think, to the end of it. Okay. And they tease a lot of comic book lore within it, and we still get some crossover stuff, or at least more comic characters. Second place, I'm gonna say Fantastic Four, only because it was fun to see Doctor Doom just go completely ham. I really had a good time with watching him just do all kinds of crazy stuff. It was so bad, but it was fun watching him go nuts. And fun watching Silver Surfer just chill with the lions.
Silver Surfer was terrible.
He was awful. Silver Dong forever. Do you know why Iron Man gets the bottom spot? It's not because it wasn't horny enough. Do you remember why?
Is it just because of like all the terrible Mandarin stuff?
There's one specific transformation.
Oh, it's because of the
the
first time the CG when he turns into Iron Man for the first time in that episode.
CG, man, it was not fully baked. That sucker came out raw and awful.
I'll say in the defense of that CG, nothing in any of these 3 cartoons has felt fully baked.
No, that's totally true. But none of the other ones had the audacity to try a CG transformation except Iron Man, and it's so bad. You get a furry, fuzzy Iron Man. Go back and listen to the episode if you want to hear more about it. But
I'll almost say that it's at the top of